let's talk about tools. We're going to start with the basics. Obviously, a sharp pair of scissors, or if you want to use a rotary cutter, sharp rotary cutter. Yours does not need to have a cat sticker on it, but it doesn't hurt. Clips. So I find like these little plastic clips secondhand at creative reuse centers again. You can also use binder clips. You don't want them to be too strong though, because it might put a little bit of a dent in the leather. But what you really don't want to use is pins. Obviously, it makes a hole. Okay, let's talk about needles. I generally don't like having tools that only serve one purpose. So getting leather needles for me, leather needles for your sewing machine, I generally don't like to do because I don't sew with leather that much, and that is just a single purpose needle. What I'll usually think about though is what needles are going to be thin and sharp, because again, you're going to be putting those holes into the leather, the holes aren't going to be going away. So sometimes what I'll use is Microtex, which again have a very pointy tip and are thinner. You do have to make sure that you're using new pointy, extra sharp ones. Again, and if the leather is too thick, these may have a tendency to break. And you know what? You can always just try a great universal needle. Again, if it's new and it's sharp, it's probably going to do the trick, but you'll just need to test it out to make sure. Did you know that you're not supposed to use cotton thread when you sew with leather? It's because over time, the oils and the tannins from the leather actually break down the cotton thread. Now, I have to admit, this is not a rule that I always follow. For piecing it is, and what I'll generally use, my absolute favorite thread for piecing is Mettler's Metrocene. It's polyester. Again, usually I find this secondhand, but it's just a great thread. Or sometimes, so recently I got this Madeira thread, and it's specifically for denim, but what's good about it is it's a much thicker and stronger weight, again, polyester. Now, where I don't always follow this rule, if I'm going to do hand quilting, I generally will use a natural fiber embroidery thread. I know it may break down over time, but I feel like that's something that can get replaced fairly easily. And I just don't want to be doing beautiful hand embroidery with nylon or polyester thread, but that's just me. Okay, these tools are a bit of a luxury if you sew with a lot of leather or you want to start sewing with a lot of thicker fabrics or things that are a little bit sticky. They're a good investment, but you may not have them around. And that first one is a Teflon foot. So this Teflon foot for my Bernina, you can tell it's Teflon, it's green. It just helps if you're ever sewing on the top of the leather, it helps it not stick. And then you may already have this. This is a walking foot for my older Bernina, but a walking foot is going to be really helpful and really important anytime you're sewing with a lot of thicker fabrics, things are kind of moving around. This will really help them go through the machine and for you to get a great result. Okay, an iron, yeah. So I do use irons when I sew with leather. I'm just very careful about it. What I never do is use water. Do not spray water on leather. Definitely don't spray water and iron it. And what I always use when I press or iron is a press cloth. That kind of gives that little protective layer. And we'll talk a little bit more about pressing leather when we talk about seams and piecing. Probably one of my favorite tools in my sewing room is my heavy-duty tailor's clapper. I use this for everything. For leather, it is awesome because it's super heavy. You can also use just like a real heavy, I don't know, book or hammer. This helps kind of press down those seams, really wham them down, and it helps them stay open. Again, you might be a little bit surprised to see this stuff, which is fusible interfacing. Now, we talked about you can use many different weights of leather. When I'm sewing with really, really lightweight leather and I need something to be fairly accurate, I use fusible on the back. And again, I'm really careful about how I press it. In my college costume shop, I did an apprenticeship with an Italian tailor, and we made a bunch of leather military uniforms. And we did it using a lot of glue. Not necessarily this glue, any type of fabric glue works, regular Elmer's glue stick. And we'll talk about this a little bit more with piecing, but glue is an awesome way to get leather to stay in place because again, you can't use pins. Now, if there's anything I didn't cover, feel free to write your questions in the comments and I will answer them the best that I can.